41. Nothing but a battle lost, an ancient commander once said, can be half so melancholy as a battle won. And the truth of that had continued for centuries. Now, here on this unknown planet, it was true again that night for Takuda and his people. While the exhausted, dispirited survivors of the Enclave force made their desultory way back to their compounds, the equally exhausted, dispirited victors dropped to the ground and slept, or moved over to the shattered battlescape in search of surviving friends, or booty, or just because they were too tired to do anything else. Takuda, as begrimed, blood-splattered, and hollow-eyed as any of his people, sat inside his command bunker and listened to the reports from his subordinates. The attack had been more successful than they'd even dreamed it could be. The most serious damage had been to the servo on the left leg of Goodall's damaged mech. The joint had frozen in mid-stride, but she'd continued to fight until there had been no more targets in sight. The Locust could still hobble along in a crazy gated way, but it couldn't be called combat-worthy by any stretch of the imagination. All three techs were working on it now, and there was just the slightest chance that it would be mobile by first light. Fullerton reported 2 recruits wounded, both slightly, in the counterattack. He also reported that some too badly wounded to fight in the afternoon had suddenly recovered enough to search the scape for wounded, or, more probably, loot. Dakota's Tatate had taken no casualties. The adrenaline rush that created the high of combat was rapidly fading into the low that inevitably followed. This was the time when a counterattack would be the most dangerous, though the likelihood was scant. The Enclave forces were so thoroughly beaten that it would be days before they again ventured into the woods. Vost's mechs were still in Usugumo, and not likely to come forth until he'd made a better deal for their services. This last piece of information came from Fiona Sabine, one of the techs who'd originally gone with Vost and the others. Creeping into the Takuda camp just after dark, she carried a tale of fragmentation among the mercenaries. Disgusted with the situation and the mech pilot's lack of concern for the welfare of their technicians, she decided to leave. No doubt she also felt a deep bitterness at how quickly Vost had discarded her in favor of greener pastures. Takuda gave orders for the establishment of security along their broad front. The desk members were stretched thin, each one now commanding what amounted to a full squad. That would have been fine if those squads had consisted of battle-hardened troopers, but just the opposite was true. Instead of experienced soldiers, the squads consisted of enthusiastic but undisciplined Tatate and raw recruits from the Enclaves, neither disciplined nor too enthusiastic. It was not that they didn't want to do the job, just that they didn't know how, or even why. The concept of staying awake to watch an empty field for a possible enemy everyone knew would not be back did not seem reasonable to such as these. What was second nature to a soldier was anathema to a civilian. Who ever heard of staying awake all night to guard your house? Thus the desk members and the Tatate, who could sleep while awake, shouldered most of the responsibility. The need for security was very real, however. The excruciatingly thin forward edge of outposts was under constant pressure, not from the forces of the Enclaves, but from civilians fleeing the cities. They came for the same reasons that the originals had come, in search of something better. From the front came reports of numerous individuals and families seeking asylum within the Takuda lines. All were welcomed, with Fullerton and his original group taking over the task of bedding them down. Takuda terminated the truncated staff meeting and sent his people back out into the night. Though they needed sleep as much as the rest, the staff had to work while the others slept. Parker DeVood and Holly Goodall had their work cut out for them with the damaged mech, and Fullerton and Dakota had their own people to look after. Takuda followed them out into the dark. The moon was almost directly overhead, its mottled green and blue surface reflecting the light of the departed sun. The body wasn't really a moon, but another planet in its own right within the star system. Takuda looked longingly at it, wondering if there were life on its surface, if it might not be a better place for his experimental society. But the distance was impossible. It would remain a dream. Single glowing eyes, the campfire scattered through the trees stared unblinking into the night. Takuda walked among them, listening to the muted conversations all around. For the most part, those speaking were the recently arrived refugees, still too excited from their trek to settle down. Their attitudes were as varied as their background. I just wanted to get away. I want something better for my children. The thought of being under some religious leader. They don't even give you a chance to think. You should be an Osio. It's so regimented you don't get a chance to raise your kids at all. It would be better to crush them all. Then we'd be in charge. We could tell them what to do. I'm so tired and hungry. I'd do anything for a little Ocha. Crush them all. That's what I say. After today, we can do anything. You ought to try living in Usoguma. Only the rich have a say in anything. The rest of us are left with nothing, and it'll only get worse. Just leave the whole bunch to rot, I say. We can go somewhere else and get a new start. All we have to do is work together. Burn them out, I say. Takuda found himself at the edge of the fire line, faced with the impenetrable darkness of the trees beyond. He turned aside and looked back across the orange dots of the fires. So many people. None of this was the way he'd planned it. The situation was getting out of control. Sensing movement behind him, he turned quickly, his right hand resting on the holster that slapped his thigh.
Good evening, Shosa Takuda,
Came Dakota's voice from the darkness. You from the headquarters are far tonight? Good evening, Dakota. I wanted to walk for a bit. I need to think. But I had to get away from the headquarters so people wouldn't keep coming to me with questions I can't answer. Takuda was surprised that it came out this way. Commanders, especially samurai commanders, did not complain. Perhaps, he thought, the situation was changing him even more than he'd realized. He wondered, silently this time, if the change was for the better. Come to our circle, Shosa. Tonight our meal we have late. We so busy have been. You are welcome to sit with us. None will question you among the Tatate. Already you have done so much, giving us a future you have. It's not much, Dakota. For all I know, the future I've given you is worse than your past or your present will ever be, or could be. No, a future you have given us to dream about. That is worth much. Come, sit with us and listen. Takuda let the little alien lead him by the elbow into the darkness. The Tatate moved easily through the night, skirting boulders and hidden traps as he directed his less able guest through the trees. It was with surprising suddenness that they came upon the circle of squatting Tatate. The leaves overhead created a Stygian darkness that suddenly revealed the circle of figures crouched around a tiny fire. Dakota indicated a place, and Takuda also squatted down. He chose to sit with his knees pulled up to his chin, rather than in the traditional lotus position. None of the Tatate acknowledged his entrance in the circle. No change occurred in the conversation or the demeanor of the aliens. Takuda watched them, knowing they were far beyond his understanding. He shook his head. He'd have to stop thinking of them as aliens. He was the alien. They were the natives. Beak protruding into the circle, Dokepi crouched behind him, translating what the shaman was saying to the group. Dokepi was speaking in a low, sing-song voice, his eyes closed, his body rocking slightly to the rhythm of his words. He tell about the legends that came with the first ones who fell from the sky with fire, he whispered to Kodo. Of the arrival he has spoken. How like the children were they exploring their surroundings. Kill the Tatate they did at first, understanding not the respect we felt them. Then came time when almost dead were they. Helped them with food did we, and them taught to live with land. We learned to speak as they, even friendship there was. Then all changed, became strong they, took land of Tatate and cut it deeply, made things to grow, hunted they in grass and woods and hills, drove Tatate out from lands they wanted, saying that they would govern all. Again they killed the Tatate and drove them away. Other Tatate they took within their walls and made them to work. So many of our people went to cities, never to return. But legend there is that others fell from sky with fire at the same time as these. Legends say they fell far away beyond the mountains that are only a blue mist in the distance. These ones not like those of the cities you see. These ones peaceful were, but kind to all around them. They wait for the Tatate beyond the mountains, waiting to lead us to the promised land. Takuta leaned toward Dakoto. Do you think that what he says is true? Not about what happened here, but about the other incident, about the people beyond the mountains. True is, it must be so. Takuta was lost in thought. Somewhere, he thought, there must be another group of humans. Perhaps there was a real future. In all legends, he knew, was a grain of truth, some hard nugget around which the tale had been spun like the layers of an oyster creates a tiny grain of sand. The layers became a pearl, a thing of great beauty and desire. But inside was the grain of sand. Whether the pearl came from the oysters of Atera or the giant canoprods of Albiero, there was still the single grain. So must it be with these stories of the others who fell from the sky with fire. There had to be another settlement, a place for them to be safe beyond the mountains. All of them. Dest team, human refugees from the enclaves, and their friends among the Tatate. The Dest commander remained lost in thought until Dokepe had finished his story. The other Tatate sat silent in the circle, each one also deep in his own thoughts. Dakoto touched Takuta gently on the shoulder. It was time to go. The Shosa levered himself to his feet and made his way alone through the fading darkness toward the glowing fires of the human camp.